Well, gang, looks like we've got another mystery on our hands. Welcome to episode 3 of the Unmasked History of Scooby-Doo, the podcast where we delve into the mystery of Scooby-Doo media, getting clues from people who helped bring our favorite mystery-solving dog to life on various platforms, and maybe eating some Scooby snacks along the way. I'm your host, Alexa Lawler.
Scooby-Doo, where are you?
And it would have been mine if it hadn't been to those meddling kids.
Gang, we've just been handed our next mystery.
Blasted meddling kids.
On today's episode, I spoke with Zach Retz, who worked as a visual development artist on the early stages of the new 2020 film Scoob. Zach worked on some really gorgeous paintings for the film, but we go into more detail with that in the interview, so let's get right to it. Hi Zach, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. So if you're up for it, I'd like to start off with a quick 3-question trivia game.
Yeah, sure.
So question 1, which year did the original Scooby-Doo Where Are You show premiere?
Oh, man. I have no idea. Like 1970s?
1969. Very
Oh,
close.
wow. Okay. Cool.
And so the second question is multiple choice, but it kind of has 2 different answers depending on if you count the Laugh Olympics. So question 2, how many different Scooby-Doo TV series have there been across the 50 years of the franchise? A, 15 or 16, B, 13 or 14, or C, 20 or 21?
Let's do 2021.
It's actually B. There's only 13 or 14, depending on if you count the Laugh Olympics.
Oh, okay.
And question 3, how many theatrical films does Scooby-Doo have, or would have had if Scoob had gotten a theater release as it should have?
It's just going to be a guess, but maybe like 20?
There's only 3.
What?
Most of them just go like direct to DVD. There's only been 3 that have gone to theaters.
Oh, okay. But they did do a lot of movies, though, I think, right?
Oh, yeah, they do tons. I think there's almost 30 direct-to-video movies.
Wow.
So to kick off the actual questions, what's your relationship to Scooby-Doo? Did you grow up watching?
Yeah, a little bit. I wasn't, I actually didn't watch too many cartoons growing up. But once I got this job, then I really dove into it and started watching all the old Scooby-Doos.
And did you watch any of the Hanna-Barbera cartoons as well?
Yeah, a little bit.
And so how did you come to work in animation?
I started in, right after school, I did a kid's book. And then I got into a game studio and I did that for about 1.5 years. And then I realized I really wanted to get into animation after that. So, I just quit my job at the game studio. I took some classes, just worked on getting better at painting and built a portfolio. I put it online. And then it was a week later, a couple studios had jobs for me. And Real Effects is the studio that was making Scooby-Doo at the time. They had a partnership with Warner Brothers. Yeah, so they offered me a job. That movie looked fun. So I moved out to California from New York. And yeah, that's how it happened.
And how did you come to realize that you wanted to work in animation?
I always had an interest in it, in college and everything. But I think what drew me to it the most was the artists who are working in animation, seeing their paintings and seeing how they're telling a story with color and mood and characters and just looking at all these beautiful paintings that artists were doing. I think that's what drew me to it the most. Because I wanted to do stuff like that.
And for those that maybe don't know, can you just describe what a visual development artist is and what they do on animated movies?
So visual development, it's called VizDev for short, but usually you're either a character designer or an environment artist. So you're split into like two groups. So my focus is environment design, and what we do is like day one when you start the movie's like really early. Sometimes they just have like an outline to the movie. It could be like a couple pages long, or they might have a script, but we read that, and then we'll talk to the director or a production designer, and they'll launch us on some location or some part of the movie to focus on. And then we just start drawing and painting and trying to visualize what the movie can look like through paintings. And those are usually like pretty fast, quick, loose paintings to get like the feel for things. And then we do like as the movie goes, and there's like storyboards and the script gets more finalized and we know like what exact locations there are, then we'll go in and really design those different locations. Like for example, in Scooby-Doo, there's a haunted mansion, so I would do some sketches, and then the guy next to me would start building it in 3D, and then I would like draw over it and paint over it, and we'd work together and we'd design the whole location. Oh, and then later on in the process, we do what's called color keys. So those are like painting the exact shots in the movie, with like color and light, and we figure out what those movie moments should feel like. So is the sky like red in the scene, or is it gray? How does that relate to mood? How can we light the characters so the storytelling and mood comes across? And yeah, that's what we do.
And what were you specifically responsible for on Scoob?
I did a lot of pitch paintings. So it was pretty early on when I was on the movie. So I think we had like a partial script. Like Warner Brothers, like the director was getting feedback from Warner Brothers on like changes and stuff. So sometimes the director would just be like, hey, we need like more like fun, exciting moments, or we need like some epic, like crazy fight scenes, or we need some spooky stuff. So I would brainstorm some ideas with the other artists, and then we'd just paint those and we'd send them to Warner Brothers, and they'd be like, yeah, let's put that in, or let's use this. So I did that a lot. And then yeah, it's hard because they went through so many different versions of the script, and I was on like one of the first versions, so a lot of what I worked on did not end up in the movie. But one thing that ended up in the movie was the amusement park. It was on a pier when I was on the movie. They changed the location, but I designed a lot of the amusement park rides and stuff like that.
How long were you involved with the movie for?
I think about 10 months.
Okay. And so you mentioned that you were often working with the person beside you. How does that team dynamic work?
Each studio is different, but in the case of Scooby-Doo, it was very collaborative, which was fun. Like there was just like 5 artists. We're all like sitting close to each other, so it was easy to like someone could do a sketch and they'd be like, "Hey Zach, could you try some color ideas on this?" And then I'd try some colors, and then maybe there's a 3D artist, and then he would start building it, and then he'd pass it back to me, and then I would design on it. So yeah, we would do stuff like that a lot. Or other times we would just totally do everything start to finish on our own and see what each of us come up with. But yeah, we were always like talking about things and coming up with new ideas that we could show. So yeah, it was fun.
And so in the early days of development, how many pieces would you typically work on for a full-length movie?
For this movie, I probably had like a few hundred paintings. A lot of them are like versions So like I'll do a painting, then they'll give me feedback, and then I'll try like another version. And sometimes it'll be like I do a painting and then I just change like the colors. I try like a bunch of different color options. But yeah, I think in like 10 months, I wonder how many paintings that is a day. But I don't know. I think on average I would do like some of the more detailed ones would take a couple days. The quicker ones would be like half a day or a day long, but I try to be like pretty efficient, so I'm like pumping out a lot of ideas, because when you're early on you want to explore a lot. You don't want to spend like a week doing one painting usually.
And for each specific setting or scene, do you need to do multiple different angles, or do you just do one painting to kind of get the idea of what it might look like?
Yeah, everyone works differently, but the way I do it is I'll start, if they're like, hey, design this house, then I'll start with like kind of like the hero shot of the house. Like, what does it look like when the characters drive up to the house or whatever? So I'll do that painting, and then if that gets approved, if everyone likes it, then I'll do more of the production-y stuff, the more of the detail and all like the information, so people know how to build it and turn it into like a 3D set. So that could mean painting each side of the house flat with like no perspective, so they know exactly what to build. I'll figure out like the textures, like all the little details, like is there plants going up the side of the house? Is there like weathering? Is this part of the house like discolored a little bit because of like the water ran down it? Or like you got to think about all those little things. And so like after it gets approved, then I go into detail and I figure out all the tiny little pieces. So it could mean like a bunch of like little paintings to describe all that stuff.
What has to happen before your role comes in?
A lot of the times it's just, if the director has an idea, he'll just come over and tell us, and then we just go from there. Sometimes an art director or production designer will just give us an idea of what they're thinking for something, and then we just start sketching from there. But yeah, sometimes very informal. They just ask if you can try some stuff out, and they rely on us to give like creative solutions to these things.
And can you elaborate a little bit more on your specific process?
Totally depends on the kind of assignment and how epic it is, or how detailed it is, or if it's a major location or a smaller, less important location in the movie. But like usually I'll spend, if it's like a more important location, then I'll spend like a day doing research, gathering references, just figuring out as much information I can about this location or these buildings I'm designing. That might include like watching like some YouTube videos that of people like exploring something, like a documentary, or just seeing what I can come up with on Google, going into Pinterest, looking up images, gathering like color ideas, design ideas, texture, all this stuff. And I'm just building, like, I'm dragging all these images into like a big Photoshop document so I can refer back to them and look at them. So I do that for like a day. Usually I'll start like sketching like little thumbnail ideas as I'm doing that. And then say I'm given like a week to do this, then I'll spend like the rest of the week just doing paintings. It might be, I'll try to do like a painting every day, or I'll try to get like a couple quick paintings done in a day to just explore and try lots of different ideas. And these paintings are like inspirational. The goal of these are to get the directors and producers like excited about this, and then if these get approved, then we'll get into like how are we going to build this and how are we going to make this like a tangible thing. And I treat them like I would kind of like a traditional painting. Like I just do a little sketch. I figure out like the values, like where I want my lighting to be and stuff, just all in black and white. and then I just put in color and put in a little bit of detail where it's needed, and then if it's feeling right, then I just move on and do another one.
And what is it like when you're adding colors to maybe someone else's drawing?
I like to, if I'm painting on top of someone else's drawing, if they like give me a sketch, or maybe I take like a storyboard panel or something, I'll look at what's most important in their drawing, because everyone draws a different way. Everyone has like their shorthand for things. I try to pick up on those things, and what do I want to preserve in their drawing versus what do I want to like paint over and change in the painting. But I try to be faithful and like respectful of their drawing, because usually it's a drawing that's been like approved or something. So I want to keep as much of that as I can. But yeah, I try to maintain their drawing, and then my process is pretty much the same. I'll figure out the value structure and how I want my lighting to be, and then I just drop in color and go from there.
And for animation specifically, do you take a lot of inspiration from real life images, or do you look at a lot of animation for other animation for inspiration as well?
I don't really look at animation. I'm usually, for inspiration, I look at photos I take, photos I find online. I look at live action. Yeah. I look at like old like master paintings, like paintings that artists have gone outside and painted and observed from real life, because you'll pick up things about like color and lighting from those people. But yeah, I try to stay away from animated movies, because I want whatever I'm doing to feel unique and different, because a lot of animation, it tends to look the same. Like you can't really tell what studio has done what a lot of the time. It's like, is it a Disney movie or a Pixar movie? Like, I'm not sure. So I try to come up with something new.
Okay. In terms of color, did you look back at older Scooby-Doo movies for kind of the feel and the mood for the color palette that you might want to go for?
Yeah, that was something we tried to stay true to when we were doing art. And one thing, like as I was like when I started the job, I was watching a lot of the old Scooby-Doos, and one thing I noticed that was kind of like a style choice in those cartoons was they would have like a background sky or something that was like really crazy saturated color. It'd be like bright purple or something, and then in like the foreground things would be more desaturated and like dark, and it gave like an interesting feel. It's like it's scary, but it's still a cartoon and it's funny. Like that, those like saturated pops of color reminded you that it's still like a cartoon and funny. And but then like the dark shadows and more spooky lighting was reflected like it's a spooky mystery. So those were things I tried to do in my paintings when we were on it. That's something we really wanted to make like the final movie look like.
And did that take a couple tries to get true to that, or was it pretty much like right off the bat you kind of knew what you were doing?
Yeah, it took a little bit. Anytime I try something new or try to incorporate someone else's like artistic ideas into my own stuff, it takes a little bit of time because it pushes you out of your comfort zone a little bit. I think my tendencies go more towards like reality and like pushing reality a little bit. But then something like Scooby-Doo was like really cartoony colors at times. So I had to try to figure out how to make that work in a painting with realistic lighting and value structure.
Backtracking a bit here, once you have a sketch done, when are you feeling ready to add color to it?
The way I sketch is it might start out with like a tiny little line drawing, like really quick, just to figure out like the general shapes, and then I'll like block in the values. And sometimes my line drawing, I do that along with like blocking in my values, so it's not really a drawing. I'm kind of just like, oh, big black shape here, characters here, and it's like a blob, and then they're silhouetted by a big white shape. I think about it like kind of abstractly, but that gives me like the impact, like the staging and the feeling of the painting. And once I feel that is that's feeling right, like I can read it at that stage, then I start painting. I start putting in the color because I don't sit there and try to refine like a person and like every little finger or everything like that in a drawing, because I know that I'll just figure that out when I paint.
And once you get to the painting stage, are you typically doing like this is the final product, or do you do a couple drafts?
Depends. Sometimes I have a very clear vision for something, and that's usually best. But if I don't know exactly what I'm doing, or if I can't really picture it too well in my head, like maybe I'm asked to do something that's like feels strange to me, then I'll try a bunch of different color and lighting options. So after that drawing stage, then I might try like 5 different color options or something and see what's feeling the best for me. And then I'll pick my favorite, or I'll show my art director or something and see what they like. I'll get some feedback, and then I'll pick one and then turn that into the final painting.
And once a piece is completed, is it often that it'll be approved right away, or is there always a bit of feedback?
It's pretty much always feedback. Yeah, it depends though. Like, but usually it's like you're given like a launch, and a lot of the times it's pretty vague. So you're doing what you think is best, and then the director, like once he sees that, he'll get like an idea or something. So then you'll incorporate their idea, or you'll try some new paintings with that new idea. But yeah, usually there's many rounds. Like for example, like right now I'm designing like this girl's dress in this movie, and it's like a very unique kind of dress, and I've probably done like 20 different options, and I keep just showing new things, and then my director will be like, oh, that's cool, but why don't you try like some of these things? And then I'll like try to incorporate that. Yeah, so some things just take longer than others.
Is there an average of how many versions you might do?
mm, not really. Like it varies so much. Like one of my friends was telling me they're a character designer. They're saying they've done like hundreds of different versions of this one character for this movie, which is just insane. Like that's spanning over years and years of time.
Oh, wow.
Usually environments aren't that crazy. Usually it's like you try a few things, and then they'll pick one, and we'll move on. But
And so when it comes to the work in the visual department, when does that end? Like, does it go through right up until the final cut of the movie?
yeah, so some artists are a bit more specialized. Like maybe we hire someone because they're really good at this specific thing. Then they might just be on the movie for a few months, and then we don't need them anymore. But if you're more general, you can do like color, lighting, design. Like you can kind of do everything. Then you'll be on from very beginning till the very end. Like for example, like Spider-Man, when that came out, my art director was saying the night before the movie went into theaters, he was doing like color adjusting things, like matching the color and stuff, and knowing like the next day people were going to be watching this movie.
And do you have a favorite piece that you developed for Scoob specifically?
It's hard to pick a favorite. I think it was weird when I was working on the movie. It was my first movie that I worked on, and it was like 5 years ago, and I didn't know like what level I was at, or it was hard for me to judge my own artwork. And I remember thinking that I was like, oh, I'm not good at this. I suck. I shouldn't have this job. And then looking back at some of those paintings I did like 5 years later, I was like, oh, these are I like some of these. It wasn't as bad as I thought. It's kind of like imposter syndrome, you know? But yeah, I think I like this Wacky Races one I did where it's like all these is an old Hanna-Barbera cartoon with all these like crazy vehicles racing along the desert cliffs and stuff. And then I also like this one with Scoob and Shaggy. They're on a stretcher and they're like flying down the stairs in the asylum, and all these little rottens with their glowing eyes, those are like the little robots, they're like chasing them down the stairs. I kind of like that one. I could picture that being like a funny, kind of creepy story moment in the movie.
And what was it like to venture into Scooby-Doo for your first experience in full-length animation?
It was like a dream project because it's these characters are so established and developed already. So I felt like so much of the work was already done. Like we already have like a great cast of characters. They each have like amazing personalities. So like doing artwork that just puts them into like new locations and new situations. Like there's challenges, but it almost felt easy. It was like, oh, like these characters are so great. I can just like put them into this moment and it'll feel good. So yeah, that was a lot of fun, and thinking about it in like a more cinematic way, like a big budget animated movie was really exciting because you can tell a Scooby Doo story in a more epic way. It's not like a 2D show. It's CG. You can do like it opens up so many more possibilities. So that was a lot of fun.
When you were working on the movie, it was fairly early stages, and obviously there were a lot of concepts and Hanna-Barbera characters that ultimately didn't end up making the final cut. Is there something that you maybe would have liked to have seen left in the movie?
Yeah, a couple things. Jabberjaw, like this shark, which is always like a really strange concept, like this shark that can like walk around on land. I forgot. I think it was either boy or girl. I don't remember what we were gonna do, but I think in the end it was gonna be a she, and she was like a funny, goofy, interesting character that the early version of the movie, I thought she was like the way she was introduced and the way she became part of like the Scooby Doo team. I thought that was pretty cool. Oh, and then there's Grape Ape, like the giant purple ape. That was he was pretty cool. I think something I really missed was as the movie evolved, it turned into more of a superhero movie instead of like a classic scary mystery. And like I fell in love with Scooby Doo like as a kid because it was like a mystery, and it had this kind of storyline that you could kind of count on. You know, like the Scoob gang goes out and tries to solve a mystery, and then they pull the mask off the guy. I feel like Warner Brothers really wanted to make like a big epic like superhero movie, but I wish it was more of the classic Scooby Doo movie. But whatever.
How do you feel about the final product of the movie?
I mean, the first time I watched it, I was a little disappointed because I was expecting something like I mentioned, like more of like a spooky Scooby Doo story. So I was pretty disappointed. But then I watched it again with like a bunch of my friends, and they were all laughing the whole time, and they were like, "Wow, this movie's so silly." I was like, "Okay, yeah, you're right. It's a silly movie." So I appreciate it now. I mean, it's difficult with movies because you can have the greatest team of like artists and directors and everything, but it's really the final outcome. It's all based on like the executives like way up who are like trying to see like what things will make money, what things are like in right now. So they're really the ones telling us what to do. So really you don't have much control, which is a little disappointing, but
And what is it like to watch the final product of a movie 5 years after you finished working on it?
I was just so happy that they made the movie. Because the movie kept getting like put on pause, and I was like, are they ever gonna make this? Like, this was my first movie. I want to like show this art that I did, and so yeah, when they said it was coming out, I was really excited, and it's always a great feeling when you see all this hard work that you've done. You see parts of it end up on screen, and I really like being part of something bigger like that, like working with your friends and you're creating something together. I watched it with two of my friends who I worked on it with, and it was really cool to sit there and pick out like what parts we got to work on and stuff like that.
What do you think it is about a cartoon dog solving mysteries that has been able to hold up for 50 years and, having all these incarnations?
I think, well, like so many people just love dogs. I mean, I love animals, and each character in that cast, like Shaggy, Velma, all of them, they all have very unique, different personalities, and we can, I think anyone can relate a little bit to each of those characters, whether you're a bit of a nerd or maybe a little bit more of a jock or whatever. You can relate, or you've been in situations where you have like a group of friends that have similar personalities. So I think it's that you can relate to those characters that make this thing just last for so long.
I think that covers all of my questions. Is there anything else that you wanted to add at all?
I had a lot of fun working on the movie, and I thank everyone who gave me a shot at my first animated movie. I really appreciate that, because that was like the launching point in my career. Like, after that first job you get, then as long as you don't mess up too bad, then, because there's so much demand for artists now that as long as you're halfway decent and you're nice, then you'll just get job after job. So I was lucky I was given an opportunity.
And just before we end here, do you have any recent projects that you'd like to promote?
I mean, not really. I'm always like I always have like personal projects and things that I'm working on. So just follow me on like Instagram, just Zach Retz, and you'll get to see like daily paintings or like little bits and pieces from my own stories that I'm developing. But yeah.
Perfect. And you mentioned Instagram, but are there any other social media channels where people can get in touch with you?
Yeah, there's Twitter, Facebook, ArtStation. There'll be links on this. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that covers everything. Thanks so much for coming on the show today, Zach.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
And that concludes today's episode. Another huge thank you to Zach Retz for being on the show. It was great to talk to you. If you want to see some of Zach's paintings for Scoob, be sure to check at Unmasked SD on Twitter, at Unmasked SD Podcast on Instagram, or at unmaskedsdpodcast.com. I've got a few posted there, and there will also be a link to Zach's pages so you can take a look at all of the ones that he's got posted. If you like this episode and want to hear more, also make sure to check those social media channels or the website. Or you can listen to older episodes wherever you like to get your podcast fix. And if you want to follow Zach, you can find him on Instagram at Zach Retz, on Twitter at Zach D. Retz, and there will be a few more links to find him in the description. Thanks for listening, and keep an ear out for the next episode. Scooby-Doo!